Also, I see that you guys are doing a giveaway. Olin, my question is, how are you guys affording this when I still have to spot you money for Game Pass?
Discussing like what we were gonna do, like, if it was Canes versus Knights in the final in Atlanta. There were a lot of things like thrown around. Like I think Ian had the idea of doing the 24 hours in a in a Denny's or something like that. Every pancake
Bro,
you
in
Yeah,
what?
eat,
I would be going to Waffle House 24
yeah,
hours.
like yeah, every
Okay.
pancake one of us eats is an hour off our time. But if we barf it up, that like the hours are back or some shit like that. But like I was thinking, like, okay, what if the loser of the Stanley Cup Final has to buy the Conn Smythe winner's jersey? And then
Mhm.
I threw that idea towards Ian. He's like, "Nah, I can't spend $300 on a jersey." Like, hey, that's fair. What about a jersey? Or no, I think he said jersey. He's like, "Yeah, we'll just do a jersey." And I'm like, okay. And then I thought about it a bit more. I was like, what if we had a little bit more fun? It was like, let's say whoever like won the Conn Smythe, we would give away that jersey to some random follower on Instagram, and then like we kind of make it like our first big giveaway of it. And like he said,
And then
yeah, we're down.
you
So
grow the podcast.
yeah,
Actually,
like pretty much,
the
yeah.
most confusing post
This is
ever made.
marketing 101. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, no, like if you guys are interested in participating in this giveaway that we're doing, we have a pinned post on the Coast to Coast Instagram. Just give me 1 second while I pull that up. Yeah, the Coast to Coast Instagram is at Coast to Coast PDCST. It's gonna be that
Y'all need
pinned
a better
post, our
Instagram
first pinned
handle.
post. We tried, Zaylor. We tried.
There's so many coast to coast podcasts.
Then come up with a better name.
No, we tried that. We tried that.
Coast to coast. What are you talking about?
But yeah, if you guys are interested in participating in this giveaway to win the Conn Smythe winners jersey, all you got to do is go to the pin post on the Instagram, and again, that is at Coast Two, the number two Coast Podcast, PDCST. It's going to be that pin post. All you got to do is like the post and comment who do you think is going to win the Conn Smythe Trophy at the end of the Stanley Cup Final.
See,
And with
personally,
that,
I think it's gonna be me. I think I'm gonna win.
To give you
Like I don't know what the
Uh,
Vegas
no,
odds are, but I would take
I
them.
think we lost. Oh no, he's back. He's back. I thought we lost him.
probably will at some point.
Yeah, but with that being said, I think it's time we get in the meat and potatoes, guys. I think it's
I'm
time.
so hyped. I'm so hyped.
It is that time, ladies and gentlemen. The Stanley Cup Final is upon us, starting June 2nd. Today is May 31st, as of recording, and we finally know the two teams that will be playing in the Stanley Cup Final. Bit of a surprise, but also not really at the same time. The Vegas Golden Knights will be going to Raleigh, North Carolina for games one and two to take on the Carolina Hurricanes. And I am joined today by two Hurricanes fans. One's a full-time Hurricanes fan, the other one's a LARPer. I'm kidding, Zaylor. But
Carolina LARPer, but the best Carolina LARPer of all time. Let me tell you.
this guy's a
Dude,
Minnesota Wild fan, by the way.
I have dual residence. I have dual citizenship. Leave me alone.
But yeah, no, we have two Hurricanes fans. We were supposed to be joined by another one. If you remember Ben Bolin from our playoff episode, he was supposed to join us. Unfortunately, it was his birthday last night. Happy birthday to Ben, but he lost his voice. And if you saw any of his Instagram stories, you know exactly why he lost his voice. He was out last night getting turned up for his 21st birthday, I believe. So happy birthday to Ben. Uh, Sad he couldn't make it out today, but I guess I'm gonna have to fend for myself against these Hurricanes. But once, like I said, happy birthday, Ben.
You know what they
But
say. You know what they say. Two Hurricanes fans go around the outside.
they're going
Um,
around the outside on me. That's all I'll say. Night.
you know what other song I like? Sweet Caroline, bop bop bop. The Habs are winning the cup, the cup, the cup.
So
Did not deserve as much hate as they got. That song is so much worse.
so we're gonna start off real quick by going just gonna do a quick recap of the conference finals. We'll start off in the West. The Vegas Golden Knights swept the Colorado Avalanche, and I'm gonna be completely honest. Who honestly had a sweep for Vegas on
No. And if you
like
did, you're lying.
you're
If you
so
did, you're
lying.
lying.
Like after game one, because I watched game one, I'm like, okay, you get a win in Denver. Your probably best outcome is that you're going to tie the series. Going to be a tied series heading back to Vegas. You probably win two there, and then you get back. Maybe Colorado, back on home ice, wins game five, and you come back and win it in six. No. To sweep the President's Trophy winner is kind of unheard of, if we're being completely honest. Like, yeah, Colorado had injuries. They had Makar out for half the series, and McKinnon just ate a shot block off Shea Theodore. And you still think that you Colorado probably should have won maybe a game, or like, at least you think they should have. Just to not win a game at all as the President's Trophy winner, it's kind of a letdown. And I don't know where Colorado goes from here.
They don't have a lot of options. I mean, they are a rather old team. Like, they still have a couple of young guys. They still have Natchez. They're an old team. They're not going to be able to do anything going forward. Brent Burns is probably not going to come back, so that defense is going to look even worse somehow. And I mean, you just saw it. The second Makar went down, they had nobody else to step up. Like, not even close. And I don't see them having much more long-term success. Like, I don't think they're going to go back to back with the President's Trophy. I think they're going to need to take a long, hard look at this team and say, okay, how do we build this with not just McKinnon and Makar doing all of our work?
I will say on the defensive front, at least Sam Malinsky looks promising, and I think he's definitely probably their third option upcoming for the future behind the Makar and Tays pairing. But I do think it is a problem because I feel like that gap to Makar to Malinsky is very significant in the fact that, they kind of had to rely on him. That was not sustainable, and I feel like that's really kind of what killed them is obviously, not to discredit Vegas, but I think this team runs through Makar, this team runs through McKinnon, and having Makar gone for 2 games and then having McKinnon, arguably probably injured in a pretty decent capacity for the last half of the series. It really was kind of, I think, what led to their downfall because I really don't think they have the firepower, especially in the playoffs. You can talk about Natchez, and Natchez is a great regular season player, but I mean, they really didn't have anyone to back up McKinnon and Makar when they weren't on their A game. Um,
No.
Brett Kulak isn't going to solve those problems.
And when you look at it too, that game three where they went up 3-0 and then lost it by the end of the second period, that was it right there. There's no way your
Yeah,
season can come back after that. Once you blow a lead like that, and once you play with such little confidence, there's no hope. And Vegas just came in and they knew what they needed to do and they did it. I mean,
I
they
got,
took
I got,
trust me. Wait, hold
I
on.
got, I
One
got,
thing
I
I
got
gotta say.
go ahead.
Trust me, I saw the 3-0 lead incident happen less than 2 weeks ago. Trust me. That's how you end your season.
why what happened?
Um,
We don't want to talk about it. We don't got to talk about it.
I
All
will
I'm
say about
saying
go ahead. Just wrap it up real quick.
Yeah, all I'm saying is Jared Bednar is not getting enough flack for that, for the flack that John Hines got for the same exact situation. That's all I'm gonna say. All right, go ahead, Olin.
All right, I was gonna say like I had a funny game three story because we were up in Atlanta. Me and Ian were actually more like down in Atlanta, but that you'll see some content on that soon. Um, I was getting on the airplane going back to Vegas, and this airplane had no Wi-Fi. Shout out Airlines in the worst possible way for not having Wi-Fi. Um, so real quick, I'm on the plane, right? I'm supposed to have my phone in airplane mode. I turn it off, go on, check whatever sports app, just check the score. I see it's 2-0 Colorado. I'm like, okay, yeah, this game's probably done. Colorado's probably back in the series with a win tonight. Just get them in game four. As soon as I land down in Vegas, I turn back airplane mode on. I see that Vegas one. I almost screamed. I almost screamed on the plane. I like I made I made like there's I don't know if you remember the when the NBA shut down because of COVID. There's a video of Mark Cuban just like going on his phone, go like just like checking, like seeing that the NBA shut down from Woj. I made that exact same face like when I saw Vegas won the game. But
You Wojak.
it's
You
I
punk, yeah.
literally Wojak. I literally. But yeah, Colorado Avalanche. They have a lot of questions going forward. They got to re-sign Cale Makar. They probably get that done, but they're probably going to lose a ton of depth pieces in the process. It's going to be interesting off seasons for Colorado where I called this too. This happens way more often than it should, but the Central Division is just so top heavy, and then everyone beats each other up in the first two rounds. By the time the conference final happens, the Pacific Division team just comes in, takes care of business, and goes to the Stanley Cup Final. And
Yep.
that's really been the trend since 2022. But
I would
yeah,
like to say one thing about that is that like people will point at and be like, well, Colorado, they played Los Angeles and then they only played 5 games against Minnesota. But think about it down the stretch with how many games Dallas, Minnesota, and Colorado played against each other, even just right before the playoffs started. And not to mention, their schedules heavily filled with more games against these teams. So like also that 5 game series against Minnesota, while it was only a short 5 game series, Minnesota did beat the ever living crap out of them, and that's why Makar, wasn't even there for the first 2 games of the Vegas series. I mean, you look at that, and while it was a short series, they kind of just demolished them for the future because they threw out Makar and McKinnon. I don't know what I'm sure there was some things lingering throughout that whole postseason run, but that kind of playing against teams, obviously the playoff format being screwed up is a discussion for a whole different thing, but what it boils down to is having the top three, essentially three of the best teams in the league in the same pit in the same segment of a playoff bracket, and then just having them beat each other up. It doesn't really make that much sense because then it just points to all these what should be Western Conference Final matchups happening in the second round, and then by the time Colorado got to Vegas, they were just gassed and they had no one else to take the pressure off. So
So basically, this is Minnesota's fault. You guys did this.
basically, this is kind of Minnesota's fault for like the whole Cale Makar thing because like I think if Minnesota doesn't like injure Cale Makar in that series or like whatever happened with that. I think if that doesn't happen, I think Colorado at least like doesn't get swept. But
I do want to add because I've seen a lot of people say that Minnesota would beat this Vegas team. I don't really think so.
No.
Not without Joel Eriksson Ek and Jonas Brodin out. I think if Minnesota was healthier, like they had those two guys, I think maybe it's a little tougher series. But if you have Eriksson Ek and Brodin out, I think the outcome's gonna be pretty similar. And like maybe Minnesota takes a game or two, but yeah, I don't think Minnesota would have beaten the Vegas Golden
I
Knights.
don't know if they would have beaten them, but I definitely if again obviously it's a big if. Obviously if Erickson, Ek, and Brodin were in that lineup, I do think they would win a series against Vegas. It's just the big problem was that we obviously had to be pitted against Colorado and Dallas beforehand. So looking at it from that way, it's pretty hard to, because not to say Vegas isn't a good team. It's just that Dallas and Colorado were regular season juggernauts, and then you have to really crawl your way through those series. And yeah, it's obviously with the playoff format, it's obviously pretty difficult to get through all of those teams and then still have a whole team assembled without injured and IR and all that nonsense. But I obviously it's a big hypothetical game, a big Justin Herbert game we have going here. But if Minnesota's healthy, I do think they probably would beat Vegas, and I do think it's just I don't think they would have beat Colorado this year. So that obviously, with that being said, they wouldn't have beat Vegas because they wouldn't have beat Colorado. But
Vegas is just so
Justin Herbert,
Like you saw through the entire series with all the hype that Colorado's center depth had going into it. I felt like Vegas's bottom six played 1,000 times better. I thought they
We
were
love Brett Howden.
yeah. Okay, I hate to say it. I kind of do love Brett Howden. He's been a beast. He's been a
He's
beast.
he's a he's at the top six. No, Brett Howden's a top six guy.
Yeah, he's playing with Marner and
Well,
Carlson.
he's a depth player. He's not like a Marner. He's not a Stone. He's not a Barbashev Dorfeyev player.
That's true.
But
Even like
you
Keegan
know,
Kolesar had a crazy series.
yeah, Keegan Colasar was pretty good.
Dude, Keegan Colasar. We'll touch on Vegas later as we preview the Stanley Cup Final. And speaking of the Stanley Cup Final, it's time to talk about the Eastern team that did not make it to the Stanley Cup Final. They had to go through the Carolina Hurricanes, and that would be Montreal Canadiens. Is there anything you two want to sing praises about the Hurricanes? A certain
There
two-syllable
is one
word?
thing I would like to sing.
What would
There
that
is
be?
one thing I would like to sing.
What would that be?
Ole, ole,
Hey,
ole,
ole, ole,
ole.
ole. Ole,
Ole,
ole.
ole,
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 ole, ole,
ole, ole,
ole.
ole,
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 ole.
ole. You wanna know what I
That
really do
was
have to say is everyone is saying well everything I'm hearing right now is the Canes didn't play anyone. The Canes haven't played anyone serious, yada yada. Well, one, we won the Eastern Conference, so like that's kind of what's supposed to happen. But two, Canes didn't beat anyone. All right, so let me go through. Let's throw back to when first round series. Why was everyone saying Sens in six?
that
Second
was the
round
best series.
series. Why was everyone saying Flyers in seven? The Montreal series. Why was everyone saying Habs in five? But I thought the Canes didn't play anyone. I was told the Canes didn't play anyone.
Is it that the
And
Canes didn't play anyone, or did they just make teams look that bad?
And the other thing is what I really want to point out here is if you look at the obviously the stat metrics, like if you look at the best goaltenders in the playoffs, um, let's see. So obviously Frederick Anderson is in there, but the other three in the top four of the best goaltenders in the playoffs were Dan Vladar, Jacob Dobish, and Linus Ullmark, and the Canes went through all three. And the other goalie in the top five in goal save above his expected and overall performance is Carter Hart. So to say the Canes didn't play anyone honestly is a really I get they won the Eastern Conference, so obviously their schedule might have been a little bit easier, but they quite literally up to this point have run through the three best goaltenders in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and they are about to run into the fourth best goaltender in the Stanley Cup playoffs in the Stanley Cup final. To say they haven't played anyone to me is kind of absurd.
And don't get me wrong, Philly is kind of a cupcake team. That was kind of an easy win, but I feel like Ottawa for a first round opponent was one of the harder ones we could have gotten. And then most of us going into the conference finals were saying we'd rather play Buffalo because we know how, you know, fast Montreal can score goals. Did not see any of that past game one. After that first period, they just emptied the load and they had nothing left for the next four games.
For me, honestly, I would have rather played Montreal because not to say that their run was a bit fluky, but like obviously they earned it and they made it that far. But they won game seven in Tampa with 9 shots on goal. That's never happened and probably never will happen ever again. Um, Buffalo, again, that game seven overtime, you know, um, obviously that, I feel like they were the hard earned and deserving winners of that series, but you saw it multiple times in the first two rounds where they would go very sustained periods, also known as like the entire goddamn game without shooting the puck at the net. And ideally, if you want to win a hockey game, you shoot the puck at the net, and that's a big recipe for success. And we kind of saw it in these last couple games with Carolina, where they didn't shoot the puck efficiently, and they couldn't score, and nothing could get done, and they just got suffocated. And I
Yeah,
had that feeling that, obviously they got through Tampa and they got through Buffalo, but against a team like Carolina, where like it's a very defensive heavy pressured system, you're not going to get through with not shooting the puck at all. That's just obviously that should be a given, but especially with a team like Carolina, there's no way you can get away with that.
It doesn't help too when Slavkovsky, Suzuki, and Caulfield just completely disappear after that first period. I mean, they had
Nah,
like
bro, wait, but Caulfield had the 5-1 goal in Game 5. Come on
Chris
now,
Paul. Chris Paul hits
Chris Paul.
huge three
You
to
had the
cut
Chris
into
Paul.
the We posted that at the exact same time, by the way. I don't
Yeah, we did. I feel
know.
like everyone did. I feel like I saw like 10 Chris Paul posts. I mean, to be fair, what else are you gonna post in that moment? Like,
Yeah, dude. But no, they only had 1 point. Sorry, before Caulfield's goal late in game five, they only had 1 point through games 2 through 5. That is
okay.
unacceptable, and you're not going to win anything like that. You're not going to win anything. Even even Ottawa's star players played a little bit better than Montreal's did in
Minus
comparison.
Brady Kachuk.
Well, yeah, he was pretty awful too. But
Soon to
no,
be Minnesota Wild Brady Kachuk, by the way.
No, actually,
trading the whole
no,
future.
no.
Trading Brock
Um,
Faber for Brady Tkachuk 1-for-1.
no, no. I don't think so. Actually, no, I'm okay without that. Actually, I don't know, guys. No, but what
Yeah,
I will say is I would like to make a special address to everyone who said Habs versus refs. Why don't you just score?
yeah,
Are you stupid?
yeah. I mean, like, are they dumb?
Like I get refereeing in sports is pretty goddamn awful, but with the way they got absolutely just demolished in those last few games, that's not the refs' fault for that happening. Let's be so honest, guys.
And what did they want more power plays? The power play was terrible that entire series.
Oof.
And not to
And
mention that as well, their power play was non-existent, a non-factor in the series. I
this
mean,
it reminded me a lot of the 2019 conference finals where the Hurricanes just ran into the Bruins buzzsaw. And that's exactly what it's like for Montreal. They're a young team. They'll probably be back, but this was a learning experience. After winning two hard series, this was a learning experience.
yeah, and like I think Montreal does have a bright core and they have a young team. They correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure they
Oh, we
do
got some, we
have
got some, we got some interference from Ian's end. Hold up, we got a
Fuck,
little.
fucking cats walking across my desk right now.
Dude, my cat stepped on my keyboard, bro.
He did. He turned my
No,
volume way up.
no, but Montreal, if I'm not wrong, is the youngest team in the league, and I really that core is definitely a sustainable core, and I think that I think they will be there again. There's no doubt that I think they will be there sooner than later. Might not be next year, but I think in these next couple years we will see Montreal go on another deep run.
They
I think
definitely
the
take more shots.
I
That's
think the key for Montreal in this future is like you got to the conference finals. You gotta embrace like getting back there. Like getting if you don't get back to the conference finals, it's a failure every year until you run out. And then once you get past the conference finals, you get to the Stanley Cup. Now you gotta get back to the cup if you don't win it. Like it's gonna be simple. That's the kind of mentality that you kind of need to adopt just to help develop that culture more in Montreal, which it's
Yeah,
already there. Like the culture of winning cups is already there. They have 24 cups for a goddamn reason. You just gotta perfect it, and that's gonna be
yeah,
huge for Montreal in these coming years.
yeah, and I think part of it was that Carolina had been there time and time again. That they're at this point, there was no they had to push through at some point. Like there's I don't know like statistically what are the odds a team wins one out of like 20 or not Stanley Eastern Conference Final games, but like at some point the Canes had to push through with the experience they had on that roster because they have guys like Aho and Slavin that have been there for the whole, even longer than the playoff window. They were there during the dark days of 2010s.
both
They
teams.
have that experience built up. And there was at some point after what was it, 8 years of not making the Stanley Cup final, but being like really, really close every year and probably a favorite pretty much all of those years. It was about time. Like it wasn't a matter of if, it was kind of a matter of when at this point, and I think they just got played the right cards. And yeah,
I was
There's nothing.
hammering it. I was hammering at the beginning of the year. It's like this year there's no Florida. There's no Rangers. Like the Rangers have knocked out the Hurricanes past years too. Your really big challenger is Tampa and maybe Buffalo. Maybe, but not really that much. Like, and Tampa went out round one, Buffalo went out round two. This had to be your year to at least get to the Cup final. We'll see what happens in the Cup. We'll go on full predictions about the Cup later, but this had to be the year the Hurricanes made it out of the conference final, and they did. That's all I had to say on that.
There's nothing Montreal could do but get out of the way at a certain point. Like once, I think the real dagger in that series might have been in game two when Nikolai Ehlers, not even the overtime winner, the one he had before that, where he went down the
that
ice.
the drag.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. After that level of skill on top of the Hurricanes like suffocating hockey, there's nothing Montreal did. Like it was just an onslaught after that.
But it's time to get down to the nitty gritty. In the first time that we've been doing this podcast, the first year, we should say, the Stanley Cup final will be the Vegas Golden Knights and the Carolina Hurricanes, which is a final that I've kind of wanted for a while until now. That's because we're doing the podcast, but
Now it's
I'm
here.
I'm excited. I'm excited. We're just gonna talk about like the final just first of all. Like we'll do the analysis later in the episode, but I'm unbelievably excited for this Stanley Cup final. This probably be the most hype I've been for a Stanley Cup final since Vegas's
yeah,
inaugural
the
year.
last one, all the other ones you've gotten.
Yeah, you've been to as
Yeah.
many finals as the Canes. You've been around for like half the time. That's insane.
Yeah, but
Not
but
even.
I'm
Yeah.
excited. I'm excited for it, but it's it's going to be a very fun series. And I'm just going to say this right now. I've seen a lot of people say, "Oh, Vegas, Carolina, it's not going to get everybody just fuck you. If you're not excited for this series, you're not excited for hockey. You're not a real hockey fan. These are two of arguably the best teams since the 2020s started. Uh,
Yeah.
this has been a final that has been like predicted to happen millions of times before, and probably millions of times after this series is said and done. Whoever wins the cup, you there's it's nothing like it. Would you like maybe Montreal or Colorado final? Maybe, but fuck you. They're not in the final this year. It's
The
Vegas and
best team to win.
Carolina. You're gonna have to just accept that, and you're gonna watch the games anyways. They're like, oh, we're not gonna watch. Oh, you're gonna watch the games anyways. They're gonna be fun games. They might be like a little bit slow defensive series, but I think that's really good hockey because that makes all the goals 10 times more important in games like this. And I'm just excited for this series as a from a neutral perspective. That's if that's the point of view I'm going through here.
I think from a physicality perspective too, like neither one of these teams have really had crazy chippy series. They're going to beat the crap out of each other trying to get this cup. I think both of these teams are going to drag each other into the muck, and they're going to try to throw each other off their games. And yeah, like you said, two of the most successful franchises, two of the most consistent franchises since 2019. There's no doubt that this has been a long time coming, and even though Vegas was there not that long ago, I feel like they've made the moves to try to get back to another cup, and they're finally being rewarded for that. And then you look at Carolina; they've just been consistently building and adding for 9 years now. This probably the finals that the NHL deserves, whether they like it or not. Uh, you know, the President's Trophy team is not always going to make it. And I hated how people acted like the Avs were a shoe-in just because they dominated LA and Minnesota. Um, yeah, it's going to be great hockey between two defensive systems, between two fiery head coaches, and two goaltenders who are playing really hot right now.
Yeah, I guess that's the other thing is I kind of want to point out here is the goaltending matchup. Both of these goalies in the regular season were kind of just like, like neither of them really had, the dominance that we're seeing right now. And I think, maybe it's probably the pretty common take here because I feel like in most series you'd probably say this is that the X factor for both teams here is the goaltending, because I think what it comes down to is what goalie can stay hotter. I guess, obviously Freddie Anderson has more experience on his side, but Carter Hart is young, and I think that's going to be. I think it's right now. It's been a real challenge for teams to solve them, and I think it really boils down to what team can solve the other goaltender first. Because right now, I'd say you probably have the two hottest goaltenders in the playoffs going against each other for this cup. And I know there's a goalie who wants Stanley Cup the most right now. It's Frederick Anderson. After his Toronto years, it's got to be Frederick Anderson. And I think if this isn't the year, I don't know when it will be for Frederick Anderson. So um, I think that goaltending matchup's going to be a really interesting watch, and I think it's going to be a treat. I think they're going to get down and gritty. They're going to get chippy, and I think also with you mentioned the coaches John Tortorella and Rod Brindamore. They're going to get into it. They're going to get into it, and they're going to be invested in this. I think we're going to have a pretty fiery series here, and I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, just another thing is like I think goaltending is going to be important for the series, but I also think how defensively structured and disciplined you are for either of these teams will also be a huge factor. Like Carolina, pretty much known for being this defensively structured team. They'll forecheck the hell out of you and force you and like pretty much like force you to make mistakes. Vegas is kind of similar, but Vegas is a lot more. I would think just as aggressive on the forecheck. They could also forecheck the hell out of you, and if you could take down the President's Trophy winners in a sweep, nonetheless, you have a chance to beat anyone. Which it's why it's so difficult, even as like I'm wearing the Vegas jersey. I want Vegas to win, but even as a neutral, it's so hard to predict who's going to win because both these teams are just pretty similar. But when we go to the X factors, I think I got some X factors to determine who's going to win this series. But we'll talk about that later. What else do you guys got?
I just want to look at the offensive performances because I feel like both are kind of in the same situation where it's their second lines that are really carrying the load offensively and really getting the goals. Obviously, Hall, Stake, and I almost said Blake Coven, Stank and Blake have been fantastic all playoffs. First half of the Montreal series, they're a little bit invisible, but then after that, they just completely ran them over. And then when you look over at Vegas, you have Mitch Marner and William Karlsson on that second line, absolutely carrying the load for them. I think it's going to be a big challenge for the coaches picking on the right matchups. It's like, where do you put Jordan Stahl? Do you put Jordan Stahl on Mitch Marner? Do you put Jordan Stahl on Mark Stone? If you're John Tortorella, like, do you want Mark Stone to be playing an offensive game, or do you want him to just be out there to shut down the Aho line? There's a lot of really interesting matchups I think we're going to see. I think that the defensive pairs are going to have their work cut out for them. I'm assuming it's going to be Slavin trying to shut down Marner for the entire series, and I think that battle alone is going to be worth it. Um, there's just a lot of good individual stories throughout these lineups and throughout these teams that I think are going to show off. Both are obviously hungry. Both had I would say Vegas didn't have the most dominant run, but after game three in Utah, like what's their record been? They've only lost two games since then. They've been incredible. Then the Hurricanes obviously going 12-1 through the Eastern Conference. The first time that's been done since the 70s. The 70s Canadians were the last team to do that. I think it's just going to be a pressure cooker of a series. I know both of these teams are feeling it. Both of these teams are probably scared, but we're going to get some great hockey because of it.
Olin, you were mentioning some X factors. I do kind of want to touch on that because, like, obviously, I mentioned the goaltending, and obviously, I think that's very important. That's a go-to answer. If we're talking a skater that I think inherently is the most important to his team's success this series, the Carolina really needs this first line to get going, and that runs through Sebastian Aho. Obviously, he's obviously my favorite player on the team, but this series, they have the second line, but obviously for the most part, the first line hasn't really been doing the heavy lifting for Carolina. If Carolina really wants a shot at this cup, Aho needs to elevate that line. He's been in this system for 11 years now. He is kind of like, well, maybe not the star power wise, no, but like kind of the face of the franchise where he's been their guy through and through, and now this is the first time. Obviously, he's not a captain or anything, but when you think of the Carolina Hurricanes of the 2020s, you think of Sebastian Aho, Jacob Slavin, and a couple other guys, but that first line really needs to have an elevated performance if they want a chance to win this series. And I think that lies on Sebastian Aho being clean in the dot and being defensively responsible while also being able to, have that playmaking ability that we know he has because we saw it all those years with Teuvo Teravainen. That ability needs to really show itself this series if Carolina wants to be able to win the Stanley Cup.
I couldn't agree.
And all right. With that, we are going to take a quick break. If you are watching on the brand new YouTube channel, hopefully we will have the some content from our trip to Atlanta, where me and Ian tried out a Canadian classic, Tim Hortons in Atlanta. They had Tim Hortons in Atlanta, but not in Minnesota. That's a weird thing, but it's whatever. But yeah, but when we come back from our break, we will dive deeper into the X factors, and then we will make our predictions. I think you know which direction all three of us are going to go with, honestly. And if you're not watching on the YouTube, then you may not have a clue, but we're all wearing team gear. You got to guess who's who. You got to guess who's wearing who. But yeah, when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the Stanley Cup Final, and we'll make picks.
Welcome back to the Coast to Coast podcast. Big Stanley Cup preview continuing between the Vegas Golden Knights and the Carolina Hurricanes. I want to get into this a little bit more. Let's look at some specific players. Olin, who do you think is going to be an X factor in the series?
I think I'm going to go a little bit unorthodox. I have like a very long list of X factors, but I'm just going to start with like the ones I think are going to be like the key part. Vegas hasn't been relying on their first line of Eichel, Dorofeyev, and Barbashev. Dorofeyev has really been the guy that's kind of been, showing out these playoffs. I'm pretty glad he's showing up in these playoffs because that means he's going to get that big contract this summer, however that is. But hopefully by us. If not, I will consider crying into a pillow. But I think that first line, they just have to assert their dominance more. I like that Dorofeyev scoring, but Eichel only had one goal or only has two goals up to the Stanley Cup final. Barbashev, he's been scoring a little bit too, but I think that line needs to kick up the tempo, and I think they will in the Stanley Cup final. Um, I just think the entire team just is an X factor itself because when you think about the past few times Carolina got eliminated, specifically by the Florida Panthers, not necessarily the Rangers because the Rangers are a little bit of an outlier, but specifically the Panthers, they've always they're the team that has knocked out Carolina has been a very physical team that has hot goaltending, and Vegas fits that bill quite well. They're a physical team up and down the lineup, including the defense, and they have a hot goalie in Carter Hart, which I have my opinions on Hart. I'm going to keep them to myself because I'm not looking for no gang mobs coming at me. I'm going to be honest with you. But
Well,
from a hockey standpoint, he's been pretty good. And if Vegas wins the cup, it's going to come on his shoulders. And he's been playing the best hockey since the Anaheim series, but he has to play better in order to beat the Carolina Hurricanes. The one thing I will say though about Carolina is that Carolina, while they've obviously played less games in Vegas, they're only scoring 3.23 goals. The 3.23 goals per game. Vegas is scoring around 3.63. I think the key to beat Vegas is you have to score a lot of goals. And apart from, the last few games of the Montreal series, I don't really think Carolina can do that consistently against this Vegas team. Again, if the games have not been played yet, we do not know the outcome of who's going to win the cup. But that's just going to be like the one thing. Can Vegas prevent Carolina from scoring more than 3 goals a game? Because if you could do that and just outscore them, which is pretty much whoever scores the most goals wins the game, which basic elementary knowledge here, guys. Like we gotta, but I definitely think Vegas can neutralize Carolina because the Hurricanes haven't scored a lot of goals these playoffs. And I think if Vegas wins the cup, they're going to have one of their better defensive series, which they had their best defensive series against Colorado, especially that game 4. We'll just have to wait and see, but that's definitely a big X factor. Physicality and goaltending are more huge X factors. I think we're going to be in for a pretty fun series. Individual players, obviously, Mitch Marner, he's probably the favorite to win the Conn Smythe. It honestly wouldn't shock me as if Mitch Marner has a fantastic series, even if Vegas loses the cup, he's still the Conn Smythe winner. It wouldn't shock me, but it's very unlikely to happen. But he's gonna have to play his best series, and he's been playing. He did really do all that much in Colorado, but he had some assists, and he's still getting points. Obviously, the entire team honestly is an X factor because I could easily see this team smoking Carolina. I could also see this team easily losing to Carolina. Like this is such a coin flip series that it's really hard for me to like confidently say who I think is going to win versus picking just a straight up winner. Like it's so hard, and I think another like one last special X factor is going to be special teams. Vegas's power play is operating at almost 24%. Carolina's hovering around 13. Both penalty kills all hovering around 90%. Carolina 92.5, Vegas 87.5. They're both are really good penalty kills. If it comes down to a special teams battle, I think Vegas wins it marginally because I think that power play could squeak past the Carolina PK more than I think Carolina could squeak past a Golden Knights penalty kill. But other than that, that's all I have. Like I think the X factor is going to be huge for Vegas, but Carolina may also have some X factors. What do you have, Ian?
Well, first of all, I completely agree with you. As it comes down to the special teams battle, the Hurricanes' power play has been atrocious. It is a miracle that they've been able to win as many games as they have because the power play has just not helped. So I'll go with that X factor number one. That the power play needs to be at least average. Like it needs to be at least every 4 or 5 times they go out there, they score a goal. Because I agree with you. As good as the penalty kill has been, I think Vegas is going to find a way to get a few more on the board than say Montreal or Philly. The biggest X factor for me is it's going to come down to possession. Both of these teams are better when they have the puck on their stick for the majority of the game. You saw it early in the Utah series. Vegas did not have as much possession, and they struggled to find goals and to find ways to win. And it wasn't until they started hounding that puck and they started holding on to it that they were able to score some goals. Because as good as Vegas is, they're not the flashiest. Like they're not going to score on a ton of rush chances. It's mostly a lot of cycling the puck around and getting it down low, and then letting your skill players do the rest. If the Hurricanes are able to rag the puck around and keep this puck and keep Vegas to say less than 20 shots, I think this is going to be a very quick series. Not that that's going to be easy because Vegas has enough big players and they can create enough space that they're going to be able to get some shots on the board. If the Hurricanes are able to really dominate play, really get to their game, I think they can find a way to win these games 3-2, 4-2, and be perfectly fine sailing the rest of the way. Zaylor mentioned it earlier, but the biggest X factor is going to be Sebastian Aho. He usually steps his game up when he's going against another star 1C, and I'm assuming he's going to be matched up with Jack Eichel for a lot of the series. He has to outplay Jack Eichel. He has to do more. It's not only the Aho's not scoring points, but it's also just the number of turnovers he's had lately and the number of plays he just kind of flubs the puck on. He seems to be a little too focused on the defensive side and a little too focused on not giving anything up, but we're going to need that offensive punch. He's going to need to be able to get out there, drive the middle, make some space for Jarvis and Svechnikov to make some magic. Um, the biggest advantage I think the Hurricanes have is when you look at the defensive cores, Vegas has a very solid defense, but the Hurricanes have three pairings that are playing like first pairings right now. Especially when it comes to Keandre Miller, who genuinely might have been our best defenseman last series. He had a pretty tough turnover in game 1, and then after that, just completely locked it down. They got double the amount of shots, double the amount of goals whenever he was on the ice. And I think that's going to be a huge factor. Carolina has to be able to take advantage of these matchups, and they have to be able to get Keonjay Miller a really good opportunity to make some plays. Another X factor I would go for is Mr. William Carrier, which I know might seem like kind of a weird one, but that fourth line really picked up their game against Montreal. And I feel as though the Hurricanes' bottom six might be a little bit stronger than Vegas's. That fourth line has to win every minute that they can. They have to get a goal every minute that they can. I mean, they got 3 goals out of Eric Robinson in 5 games. Jankowski had 2 overturned goals in this playoffs, but he scored a couple of times as well. William Carrier, I don't think he's gotten on the board yet. He needs to show up against his former team, and he needs to win those small minutes that he gets.
Well, while you're on the topic of William Carey, I think another X factor, which is kind of like it's really in the favor of Vegas, is the experience. Like Vegas, they have guys who were on there in 2023. William Carrier was one of those guys in 2023, but they also have guys who have won it with other teams. Think of Nick Dowd, who won it in, was he on the 2014 Kings? I think he might have been on the
He
2014
Well, he was
Kings.
on the Caps, right? Or
Yeah,
no, was he not?
he was on the Caps when they won the cup in Vegas. They have a lot of guys who, have won the cup on other teams or have had been on deep playoff runs with other teams. And I think like when you look at like who's like Vegas versus Carolina in terms of experience, I think that's also going to play a little bit. If the series goes on more than 5 games, I think that's where Vegas has the advantage. They have the experience that Carolina doesn't. And if Vegas could just maybe hold on for maybe up till like game 4 and then just flip a switch, and that's kind of been like that was really the trend for the first 2 rounds for Vegas. Like, yeah, they'll kind of tussle with Utah or Anaheim, but once it gets deep in that series, you need that experience. That's where it comes in for Vegas. So I'm saying it's not Vegas like experience isn't everything, but it's nice to have when you're in the Stanley Cup playoffs in the deeper parts of a series. And I think that's going to play a key factor, but that's only if it kind of gets into that territory. It's like, okay, this may be a 6 or a 7 game series.
And that is a really good point as well because the Hurricanes honestly have not played a deep series in years. I mean, they beat. I think the last time they went to a series past Game 6 was what 2024 against the Rangers, and they lost that. Like every other series has been 4 or 5 games. Um, I think their best case scenario, they just need to hold down home ice in Raleigh. They have to win those first 2 games if they want to win this series. You can't drop Game 1 like you did against Montreal, or God forbid, drop the first 2 like you did against Florida last year. They have to hold down home ice and they have to get the matchups that they want. Zaylor, what do you think? Who's an X factor for you?
Yeah, so you kind of touched on this a little bit. I think obviously I pointed out Sebastian Aho earlier, and obviously the goaltending is important as well, which I pointed out as an X factor. I'm gonna go for something that I think is probably the most undervalued thing when it comes to terms of a structure of a playoff team, and I think that's depth scoring. And I'm for each team, I'm gonna point to 2 guys specifically here. For Vegas, I would like to point out Brett Howden. Vegas is going to need Brett Howden to show up like he did against Utah. The Brett Howden has as a experienced playoff performer, and Vegas needs that depth scoring to really overpower Carolina because I feel like a lot of times teams kind of undervalue how depth scoring can affect a playoff series because everyone's always accounting for the Mitch Marners and the Aho, Svechnikov, Jarvis, and Eichel and all that, but a lot of people don't really account for those middle six, lower bottom six guys, and going back to Carolina, I really think you said William Carrier. That's a really good shout. I would also love to point out Eric Robinson's been on fire. I think a guy that really could swing the momentum for Carolina this series is Mark Jankowski. He's had kind of I'm not going to say rough, but he's had some goals overturned, and it's kind of unfortunate. But other than that, he has looked very solid this series. I think he's going to be someone that's going to be very important to getting Carolina's fourth line rolling. And I really do think whatever team can get their bottom six firing on all cylinders will win this series. I think that's what it boils down to. Because I get, obviously the top six scoring, that's not really a question for either team. That's happening right now. It's whatever team can get those guys, the Nick Dowd, the Keegan Colasars, the Brett Howdens, the Mark Jankowskis, the Eric Robinsons, whatever team can get more of those guys on the board and firing at a productive rate, or at least just bringing something to the table, will win this series. Um, the other aspect of this game, of this series and the game, that I would like to point out that is very important is, we've mentioned it obviously with the defensive structure. Obviously, this is going to be a very defense oriented, defensive heavy played series. And Jacob Slavin obviously is, arguably one of the best playoff defensive defensemen we've seen in a minute here. Obviously, he had a pretty atrocious game one in Montreal, but I think if I'm he was great after that. But if I'm pointing to one guy, it has to be, you said it, Keandre Miller. Keandre Miller was lights out, absurd. And obviously a lot of Rangers fans are kind of nagged at him after the trade, saying he didn't really have that value, wasn't really worth all that value, he wasn't that good of a player. We saw it in Montreal how valuable he is to this team when they have another guy that can step up and play at the level he did. It really allowed the whole defensive core to flourish in that series. We saw it from Goss Despair, Sean Walker. When Keandre Miller stepped up, it allowed other guys to play in ways that they might not typically play, and it allowed for more chances for Carolina, and it really helped benefit the team, not just from a scoring perspective, but from just a structure perspective. And I think having another guy that can step up and play at the level of Jacob Slavin and just absolutely take over a series, that could be a real game changer for Carolina. So yeah, my two big ones are depth scoring, whose bottom six is going to get on the board more, and defensive structure. Again, same goes for Vegas. They got to have some of those guys step up. Rasmus Anderson and a lot of those guys got to step up. So yeah, those are my X factors: depth scoring and defensive structure for this series.
I do just want to point out one more thing. Vegas blocks a lot of shots. Like I'm looking at a stat, like a list of stats I pulled up. Shout out Sinbin Vegas for collecting all these stats, but Vegas has blocked 278 shots. That's equaling about 16.5 per game. Carolina's blocking around 200, 189, 13.3 per game. I think shot blocking is going to be huge for Vegas. Vegas knows how to get in front of shots and block them. And I think that's also going to be a huge part in this. And I think it's really hard to predict a series like this when both these teams have been so dominant throughout the postseason. We're not talking about the regular season. That those games happen in October. This is the Stanley Cup Final.
Doesn't matter.
This is the
I
Stanley
want to
Cup
make one
Final.
point. I got 1 point. Everyone in my mentions before the Eastern Conference Finals was saying Montreal swept Carolina in the regular season. How many times do we have to tell you people that the regular season does not matter in the Stanley Cup playoffs? The Stanley Cup playoffs are a one of a kind, different breed. The regular season is nothing. All
Hockey
right.
played in October is 10 times more different than hockey played in
Yeah.
early June. With
Yeah.
that being said, I think it's time to make some picks, eh?
Oh, boy.
Um, I'm gonna let you two go first because I think I know who you two are going to pick. Just give you like a quick analysis and then who wins and how many games and throw in the an old Conn Smythe winner, eh? Do that.
All right, Zaylor, go ahead, man. Floor is
Oh,
yours.
you want me to go? Do you want me to knock it
Yeah,
out
yeah, no,
first?
no,
All
no.
right.
Let's hear your prediction first. It'll
This is a
probably be
really, obviously, this is going to be a really, because I think these teams are very evenly matched. I think, if we got a Colorado or a Montreal, it would be a lot more evenly matched. But out of the four teams that were left in the conference finals, I think this matchup was the one that would have been the most evenly favored, split between two teams. And it really is. Obviously, I'm inherently a little biased, of course. But I really think that, I think on my from what I think another thing that I would like to point out, I think coaching is obviously going to be huge in the series. I think at this point in both of their careers, I really want to put all of my faith in Rod Brindamore right now. Obviously, Tortorella's been there and won the cup before, but that was 22 years ago. Um, so obviously, it's probably an expected pick, of course, but I'm really tossing and turning on this one because these are the two most evenly matched teams that we could have got left in the conference finals. My pick is going to be Carolina in 7. I think this series goes 7 no matter what. I'm going to stand on that. I think these are two very evenly matched teams. I could see this series panning out similar to 2019 St. Louis Boston. I think that was a pretty closely matched series and went 7 games. Obviously St. Louis came out on top, but um another reason, I'm just going to go for it is because the '06 Magic, game 7, I think this would be a storybook ending. I think for Fred, because I think if we win the cup here, I think Frederick Anderson probably calls it a career. If I'm being honest, um,
Might as well.
might as well at that point. Yeah, obviously I'm inherently a little biased. I really, because like I kind of want to pick Vegas because I don't want to be biased, but I think really when it comes down to it, I've never seen any team in my life that I cheer for play in a final. I can't go against my one of my teams. So I'm gonna say Carolina in 7 games. I would not be surprised whatsoever if Vegas also it's a coin flip. I think this is going 7, and it's a coin flip for 7. And the only reason I'm picking Carolina is because I've watched them. I know how they play, and I think they can win 4 out of 7. So again, I wouldn't be surprised if Vegas takes this in 7, but I'm Carolina in 7. And a Conn Smythe, I saw this argument come up, and I want to feel this argument because I think it's going to be a really interesting debate to have if this does happen. Conn Smythe, let's go Taylor Hall. I've seen this debate on if Taylor Hall were to win a Stanley Cup and a Conn Smythe, would he be a Hall of Famer?
No.
And I've seen this. No, I've seen this debate. I've seen this debate. I think where I would leave it is I would like that argument to be. I think if he wins a Stanley Cup and a Conn Smythe, I think you can give a viable argument for that. The reason I say that is he might production wise, I'd say he probably has a Hall of very good career, but accolade wise, he has a Hall of Fame level. If he wins a Conn Smythe and a Stanley Cup, I think he has a Hall of Fame accolade studded career. And I think you could very well make that argument because he's not done yet. Obviously, he still has a couple more years. So, and first overall pick, and he was Hart Trophy winner, and this would be a very big legacy moment for Taylor Hall to finally win a Stanley Cup after, is it his 16th year in the league? Something like that. I won't, that doesn't matter, but I think it would be a very legacy defining moment. And I think, I feel like he was undervalued as a first overall pick and kind of classified in the lower tier of the first overall picks since the 2010s. But I think he's absolutely had a very severely underrated career. He's always been a strong producer wherever he's been in the various random tour stops he took over the early 2020s. Um, I think this is a legacy defining series, obviously for a lot of guys, but I'm picking Taylor Hall for the sheer fact of I would love to see some discourse on should Taylor Hall be elevated to that next level of player. So, Ian, I'll pivot to you because I know you're the other Canes fan in this room right now. So I want to hear it.
Look, you're worried about not being biased. I will be completely biased. These
Canes in
hurt
4.
These Hurricanes are on a mission. We've seen it since puck drop of game 1 against Ottawa. The way this team is so dialed in and the way that they are making the ice a living hell for some of these offenses right now. I don't think they've been thrown off the magic once. Like even after a disastrous first period in game 1 against Montreal, by game 2 it's like it never happened. And I think all of these games are going to be very close. I don't think there's going to be a single blowout between it. Like I don't think there's going to be one where either team runs away with the score. I think it's going to be just 60 minutes of tough defensive hockey, structured hockey, just trying to break through each other's 2-3 for the entire time. However, I think Carolina is still so jacked up from the emotions of their conference finals win and just like how much this all means. I think they're going to lock down the first two games and then they're going to win the series at five, which might be a little short. And there's no disrespect to Vegas on that. No disrespect to Vegas. I just think the Hurricanes are on a mission. I think they're going to win two in Raleigh. They've been the best team on the road this postseason, so they'll probably take one in Vegas as well and just go from there. If I had to go Conn Smythe, I really do like the idea of the Taylor Hall Conn Smythe because I think he's probably been our most productive forward. I don't think, for what it's worth, I don't think it makes him Hall of Famer quite yet. He might need a couple more of those. But I would go Frederick Anderson because if the Hurricanes win the cup, it's going to be because Anderson continued to be solid, and he's honestly not had to do a lot. Like I feel like the games where he's had a shutout have probably been games where he's faced like 15 shots. But if he makes it to the end of the Cup Finals with like a 930 save percentage and a less than 2 goals against average, I don't know how you don't give him the Conn Smythe. Um, I think that one's all Freddie's, and yeah, give me Canes in five. Olin, let's hear your night's prediction.
So I just want to sing the praise of Carolina real quick. Carolina's been a team that I've liked for a while, and just to see them finally make the Stanley Cup final is a huge moment. It's probably a watershed moment for the Canes because like even if they lose, they'll probably be back. I wouldn't be shocked if they made it back to like at least two finals of the next 10 years, but it's been nice to see Carolina. They're so dominant. They can forecheck the hell out of you. They could shut you out on nights where you're not having a good night, and they're just a so dominant team. Freddie Anderson playing the best goaltending of his career. He's just too good right now, and it's just this series is a coin flip, and I think I'll be okay with anyone winning this series, especially if it's Carolina, and if they do, I'll be happy for them. With that being said, the Vegas Golden Knights have been underdogs for pretty much this entire postseason. And whether that's been Utah because they're not up for Utah's speed. They're if it's Anaheim, Anaheim just took down Connor McDavid. They should beat Vegas. If it's been Colorado. Colorado's been the President's Trophy winner. They're gonna beat Vegas pretty easily. Vegas has been pretty much kind of like an underdog this entire postseason. And yeah, I still think there's a pretty decent chance they lose to Carolina in the Stanley Cup final, and I'll be okay with that. I'll be honest with you. However, there's a feel to these nights that I haven't felt since the Cup year, which is why I'm going to say Vegas in six. I feel like they'll split the first two games on the road. They'll take it's going to be a split in games 3 and 4 in Vegas. Vegas will come out and just win game five, and then they'll win it at home ice in Vegas. I feel like that's my mind is telling me, okay, Carolina is probably more favored in the series, but my heart's telling me Vegas in six. I believe Ben is sharing that opinion with me as well, even though he's not here. Hope you're doing well, Ben, by the way. Just to want to add on to that. But Vegas in six, I don't know. I don't know. This is a very weird year. Like I said, I'm okay with Carolina winning it, but my heart's telling me Vegas in six, so I'm gonna go with my heart. And no,
Heart to heart.
no.
Who's your Conn
But
Smythe pick, though?
my Conn Smythe pick because there's a lot of guys who are credibly deserving of it. Carter Hart mentioned, but I think it just has to be Mitch Marner, just so Toronto fans could be a little bit more upset. But yeah,
Toronto
Vegas
fans
in
are screwed.
six.
It's either going to be Freddie or Mitch Marner. Toronto fans are so upset.
But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like Vegas, they're playing with too much right now, and I feel like they have a chance to once again shock the hockey world, as Ben
You
puts
know,
it.
Pekka Rinne is just too good right now.
He not even playing no more. All
Just too good right now.
You all know
right,
one thing I
but
want to add. I want to add one more thing here before we cap it off. The reason I lean slight edge Carolina is because Vegas has been here before, and a lot of these guys have a cup. I truly think it's what team wants it more. This is a legacy defining series for pretty much the entire Canes roster. Obviously, a lot of Vegas already has a cup. They have gold medals. They have all of that. But I truly think that a lot of these Hurricanes guys, they're playing like their life depends on it here. I mean, this series is pretty much the next. This defines the Carolina Hurricanes as a franchise. It really takes them from a historically meh team to this is a serious team. This is a legacy. This is a legacy defining series for Rod Brindamore. This is a legacy defining series for Taylor Hall, as I mentioned. Legacy defining series for Frederick Anderson, Sebastian Aho, and a lot of other guys. They haven't been here before, and this is the closest they're going to get. They're getting a taste of it right now. I really think they come out and they want this more than anyone else right now. So that's why I leaned Carolina. However, again, I wouldn't be surprised if Vegas wins. I think it's a very evenly matched series, but I really do think these Carolina guys are going to come out with a lot more heart. I really think, no pun intended, but I really do think that they want it. They want it bad. And this if this isn't the year, you don't know when. So I think they really want it. I really do. So
I feel like it
that's
should
all
be
I got.
mentioned too. The health factor of all this. The Hurricanes have gotten enough rest throughout these playoffs that really nobody's banged up, nobody's injured. You look at Vegas, they've had Mark Stone out a couple of games, they've had Carlson out at the beginning of the series. If this goes deeper into the series, I feel like you're going to see more of that. Like you're going to see these injuries pop up a little bit more. And knock on wood, the Canes can stay healthy, but healthy squad is so important this time of year. I mean, it killed Colorado when they lost two players. So if the Hurricanes can stay healthy, I think that it continues to just work to their advantage.
All right. We want to thank you guys for tuning into the probably the last Coast to Coast podcast if we don't end up killing each other by the end of the series. But we
We
want to thank you guys
sacrifice
for
an all in.
we
Anything
want to
Sacrifice Olin to the blood gods.
hashtag crucify
no.
Olin.
No, but we want to thank you for tuning in. We will see you after the podcast, or not the podcast. The series is over. Once again, if you want to enter a giveaway for the Conn Smythe winners jersey, just go on our Instagram at Coast to Coast PDCST on Instagram. We will have a Twitter account up soon, so that's going to be exciting. And then just stand by for some episodes, stand by for some shorts, stand by for some all the good content. That Timmy segment is probably gonna be my favorite bit that we ever do. But yeah, just stand by for all of it because like it or not, the end of the hockey season's here, and we have potentially 7 more games to decide that who wins the cup, who's going home sad. And just one thing, whoever wins the cup, Maple Leafs are going to lose. Let's be real here. But we want to thank you guys for joining us on this episode today. We will see you after a cup is raised. All right,
Cool.
let's get out of here.
Thank you.
Go Knights, go.